resume this briefing of the DBCC. Again, good afternoon to our good secretaries, Secretary Ben, Secretary RC, Monetary Board Member Bruce, Secretary Mina, and our USECs, our ASECs, our heads of agencies, our National Treasurer. Magandang hapon po, ladies and gentlemen. This is a continuation of yesterday's hearing, and I believe we have one of our colleagues online. This is our Deputy Minority Leader and also a Vice Chair of this committee, no other than Senator Risa Hontiveros. Ma'am, you have the floor, and you have 10 minutes, but of course, we'll be liberal in our application of the rules. Go ahead, ma'am. Yeah.
Salamat, Chair, at magandang hapon po sa inyo at magandang hapon po sa lahat. Chair, if I just may make a brief, 2-minute opening remarks.
Yes, of course, ma'am.
Salamat, Chair, as a context to my questions. So, muli magandang hapon sa lahat. I'd just like to connect several things that were said at yesterday's DBCC briefing. Sen. Gatchalian attributes an initiative to former DBM Secretary Abad whereby there was cost sharing between the national government and local governments in the construction of classrooms. He saw this as a means for having access to hundreds of LGU bids and awards committees that can help in the DepEd's efforts to address the backlog of classrooms. Chair Angara also said that LGUs will be able to help in acquiring land and project right-of-way. Sec. Jokno, on the other hand, said that LGUs have several hundreds of billions of pesos that they can have been unable to spend from previous years. And he cited the World Bank's anticipation that these idle funds would only increase over time. And then, Sec. Pangandaman gave an update on a general provision that I introduced 2 years ago, Mr. Chair, into the 2021 GAA that requires the DBM to study the scope for NG-LGU cost-sharing rules. She said yesterday that the ADB has helped them explore the scope for this, for water, housing, and school buildings, among others. So first, Mr. Chair, I thank Sec. Pangandaman for this update and hope that the idea of NG-LGU cost-sharing will find its way also into a revision of EO 138, which implements the Mandanas-Garcia ruling. Secondly, I encourage my dear colleagues for us to help the DBM operationalize cost sharing with LGUs through the reshaping of some of the 2023 agency budgets. 3 worthwhile objectives will be served, I think, if we work together on this. 1, LGUs will receive additional resources even for projects that are listed in the local government code as having been devolved, in contrast, actually, to the intent of EO 138 that implements the SC's Mandanas-Garcia ruling. 2, if we are to go by the revelation of Sec. Jokno yesterday, the hundreds of billions of idle LGU funds waiting to be appropriated can, in effect, be harnessed for nationally important goals that LGUs might not otherwise spend on. And 3, and this is to reiterate the point of both Chair Angara and Sen. Gatchalian, the national government gets to harness latent organizational capacities that may be available at the LGU level to augment national agency project execution capabilities. So to my first set of questions, Mr. Chair, to Sec. Pangandaman on slow cash disbursements, FLRs, and PSDBM, and also on this NG-LGU cost sharing. So first, Madam Sec, the cash disbursement program, according to DBM National Budget Memorandum 144 of June 2022, would reveal that you expect to disburse 715 billion pesos of the 5.268 trillion pesos in the subsequent year, 2024. Yes, Secretary? Shall I proceed, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay po. Salamat, Chair. So in other words, Sec, is it correct to say that you will likely need only 84% of the proposed funds to be authorized in 2023, while the funding for subsequent years might just be covered by MAYOAS, which I first started to hear from Sec Jokno 6 years or so years ago, the funding for subsequent years can just be covered by those multi-year obligation authorities and provided with appropriation and cash cover in, say, 2024. Sec Pangandaman.
Just to clarify, yeah, they're consulting just to inform you. They're conferring among the DBM officials. But just to clarify your question, ma'am, is it you're referring to the whole budget, 84% of the whole budget?
Yes, it would seem along budget DBM National Budget Memo 144 na parang ine-expect lang ng department to spend 84% of the proposed funds to be authorized for next year, or about that they expect to, because they expect to disburse 715 billion in the subsequent year in 2024. Kaya ang tanong ko
What is that amount, Your Honor, yung 715 billion? May you inquire what is that amount? Is that referring to a particular department, yung 715 billion?
For the whole GAA, Mr. Chair, if we read DBM National Budget Memo 144.
Well, let's wait for their answer. I don't know. I'm not familiar with these numbers quoted, Your Honor. But yeah, hopefully we can get an answer from them.
Okay po.
Honor, while they're looking
Yes,
for
sir. Certainly, please go ahead.
in reference to the surplus that I talked about yesterday, and I gave the information also to the chairman. The surplus of provinces, this is just for last year, right? The general fund for provinces, they have a surplus of 57.65 billion. Cities would have a surplus of 94.48 billion. And for municipalities, a surplus of 92.39 billion, or a total of 244.52 billion. And then in addition, they have from the Special Education Fund a surplus of 36.8 billion. So if you total the 244.5 plus 36.8, they have a surplus of 179.4 billion last year.
Yeah, thank you for that figure. That's very useful, Sec Ben. Give us perspective. May we know, with the permission of Senator Risa,
Yes,
if I while the DBM is still waiting for that, waiting to respond to, or preparing the response to you rather, may we ask Sec Ben, of that amount, is it cash in bank? Is it in what form is it held, and as of what date? And is there a figure similar to at the national level when we quote numbers, we quote disbursements, meaning the money has already been contracted and spent and paid, and we have obligations. So is that 270 billion obligated at all? Is there a similar measure when it comes to local government held funds? Your
The counterpart of this for the national government is a deficit. This is so while we have a deficit of so much, they have a surplus of so much in cash.
No, but,
It's in the bank. It's
my
in the bank.
question, Sec,
Right.
was you refer, is it cash in bank or or it's cash?
It's
basically, yeah.
revenues.
Yeah.
Their revenues both from the national government, IRA, plus their locally collected revenues minus their expenditure.
Right.
So
Is it netted out for any type of indebtedness, for
yes,
instance?
yes,
Net na yun.
It's rather their money in the bank.
Money in the bank. Okay. Okay. Would you have the breakdown of that? I think our members would be very interested. I think Senator Binay asked for it yesterday.
Yeah, I think for transparency, Your Honor,
Yeah.
I plan to maybe publish this
Yeah.
by down to each municipality and city and province.
Yes, that
So
would be great.
those mayors who will come to you and ask for money, you can tell them.
I think Senator Bato will be particularly.
So this is for transparency. We will do that, Your Honor.
That's great. That's great. If with the permission of Senator Risa, I think I'll just read the document request to remind our resource persons of the document requests of some have been complied with already, but just for to take advantage of the lull, I'll read it out. Senator Allen has for DBM, he's asked for the utilization of the 4Ps. Si Senator Binay for DBM also is listing of the LGUs with budget surplus, as mentioned, as being discussed right now. For DBM also, itemized breakdown of the 10 billion NTFL CAC fund. For NEDA, the menu, still Senator Binay, menu used by NEDA for one to be considered as not food poor, and also for NEDA, Senator Binay to furnish impact study of various government programs, for DBM to submit list of livelihood programs funded in the 2023 NEP, National Expenditure Program. Still, Senator Bina, expected output of the 2023 budget allocation for digital transformation vis-a-vis financial inclusion of agricultural workers. For Senator Majority Leader Villanueva, for the DOF and the NEDA, strategy for financial inclusion of agricultural workers. For DOF, copy of the IRR of EO 170s, series of 2022 are the adoption of digital payments for government disbursements and collections. For DOF and BSP, copy of the targets for digitalization. For DBM, number of proposed new authorized permanent positions by agencies and those proposed to be abolished in 2023. For DOF, DBM, impact of the fiscal year 2023 digital transformation budget of the bureaucracy. From Senator De La Rosa, for DBM, utilization of NTF LCAC Fund 2020 and 2021, similar to the earlier request of Senator Binay. Senator Pia Cayetano, Senior Vice Chair, for NEDA DBM timeline when to reach projections to reduce shortage backlogs in numbers of classrooms. According to Senator Pia's projections, the budget needed per year for 6 years is 52.93 billion in order to build 21,000 plus classrooms per year. And the DBM also committed to submit the following when available: the amendment to EO 138, timeline projections to address the classroom shortage issue based on proposed strategy of lot or bulk contracting, and the other proposals about cost sharing between the national government and the LGUs, and the ADB study regarding this cost sharing. And for NEDA, the HRH master plan, DOH, NEDA, ADB study. So just to remind our good resource persons. So maybe we can turn it over now to Sec Mina for her response to the question of Senator Risa. Please,
Mr.
Secretary.
Chair, before we go
Mr.
to
Chair.
Sec Pangandaman, if I could just make a quick follow-up to the data.
Of course.
given
Yes,
by
yes.
Sec. Salamat, Mr. Chair. Sec Jokno, just you told the committee about the amounts expected in terms of LGU surplus, so totaling 224.52 billion pesos. Could you provide a technical definition of LGU surplus?
Surplus is revenues, which includes the grant from the national government, plus the locally raised revenues. So that's total revenue minus total expenditures. That's their surplus.
Thank you, Sec. Salamat. Yes,
Ang
thank you,
galing.
Mr. Chair.
Kasi Risa online.
Back to Sec Pangandaman. Ano po?
Chair, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
We'll turn
Sec.
it over. I would like to acknowledge the physical presence of our Senior Vice Chair, Senator Amy Marcos. Good afternoon, ma'am. Sec, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, ma'am, if possible po, if you can just repeat again, just to make sure po of the question.
Yes, Sec, no problem. So, the cash disbursement program, according to DBM's National Budget Memorandum 144 of June 2022, would reveal that the department expects to disburse 715 billion pesos of the 5.268 trillion pesos in the subsequent year or in 2024 yet. So, in other words, would it be correct to say that you will likely need only 84% of the proposed funds to be authorized in 2023, while the funding for subsequent years, so starting 2024, can just be covered by MAYOAS and provided with appropriation and cash cover in 2024 na?
Ma'am, Mr. Chair, ma'am, the 700 billion po stated in the circular, in the NB 144 is the estimated obligations po that we expect not to be paid within the year po, but instead po accounts payable po the following year po. Because some projects po will not be completed within the year, so we cannot disburse or pay for them on that year po.
So in that case nga po, hindi po kaya posible na i-cover na lang sila ng MAYOAS?
No ma'am, hindi po kailangan ng MAYOA for this purpose po.
Okay, pero kailangan na ba nating i-appropriate sa 2023 GAA kahit actually magagamit pa siya the following year?
Yes po, Mr. Chair, because we cannot obligate po or we cannot bid po the project. Hindi po tayo makakakontrata kung wala pong total funding po for the project, ma'am, Mr. Chair.
I might have to return to that in a bit kasi parang hindi pa totally nasagot yung tanong ko with that answer, Sec. Kasi siguro para ma-appreciate nyo rin kung bakit ko ito itinatanong. Kasi ang premise ko, kung ito yung case na we could actually cover with MAYOA and provide appropriation in 2024 yet for this, so in total 16%, no, 715 billion pesos. If this was the case, then could we therefore front load appropriations for faster moving projects that the departments deem urgent? If we possess the information on what the slow moving project types were in recent years, could Congress add to the list of projects covered by MAYOAS so that fiscal space can be created for urgent fast-moving projects? Siguro una, Sec, meron po ba tayong listahan ng mga proyekto na covered na ng mga MAYOA? Meron na po bang ganun?
Meron, di ba? Nasa tier 1 siya, di ba? Yes, ma'am. Meron po tayong list or inventory of all projects po that are covered with MAYOA or MICA po.
Or MICA. Okay po. So may list tayong ganun. Hindi kaya posible na kung 16% kunyari of the proposed budget for next year 2023 ay pwedeng sa 2024 na gastusin. In fact, makakadagdag tayo ng mga proyekto dun sa listahan ng MAYOAS at mga MICAs para dun sa faster moving projects na iyon na at least for next year pwede muna nating i-prioritize over the slow moving project types in recent years, makalikha tayo ng fiscal space, dagdag na fiscal space. Sec?
1 second, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just thinking po, Mr. Chair, isang halimbawa lang, yung service contracting program ng DOTR, potentially fast-moving project yan. Tapos yung school buildings, posible slow-moving project yan. So, posible bang i-front load na natin yung service contracting for next year 2023 and then idagdag sa listahan ng mga MICA at MAYOA yung school buildings, halimbawa. So, more fiscal space for the service contracting program and other faster moving projects.
Ma'am, the MAYOAS or MICA as we call it now is already incorporated po when we prepare the budget under the tier 1 po. So, but still po, when we craft the budget and when we analyze po the budget requests of agencies, even if po it's covered by MICA, we also still take into consideration, ma'am, their absorption capacity po, whether they can disburse the funds even if po meron din pong MICA. This is part of our budget management po, considering po that we have a limited fiscal space po in our budget.
I understand, ma'am, at kaya ko nga na-appreciate actually na-excite ako dun sa ideya ng MAYOAS ni then Budget Secretary Jokno. So ngayon tinatawag nyo ng MICA. Precisely because actually kaugnay nung sinabi nyo ngayon, I would guess na yung mga department o agency na may mas mahinang absorptive capacity, baka sa kanila na locate yung mga slower moving projects din. Gusto ko lang sanang ma-maximize yung potentials nung ngayon MICA instrument or mechanism na yan, precisely given yung sinabi nyo rin, no, na masikip na fiscal space natin ngayon and the desire to create intra-budget more fiscal space dun sa faster moving projects. Of course po, Sec, Pangandaman, on the other hand, or in addition, we should also want to really just invest in the preparatory activities for the MAYOA or MICA projects. Halimbawa nga, yung housing, potable and irrigation water, tsaka farm-to-market roads, at lahat po nito nasa sona ni Presidente, so that substantially bigger disbursements for a more expansive portfolio of shovel-ready projects can be made for these after 2023. So sa tanong ko po, hindi ko naman ini-envision na forever na lang nandun sa MAYOA or rather MICA list itong slower moving projects na ngayon. The additional fiscal space that will be created in the earlier years ay para din sa sa paghahanda for bigger spending on these when the time comes. And of course, replacing, if ever, replacing slow-moving projects with fast-moving projects would increase your 2023 borrowing requirement or would force the DOF to also front-load its own revenue-generating programs. But SEC, even if the borrowing requirement of the Treasury will rise, that's up to Congress naman po, di ba? So as long as we don't
Yes
exceed,
po.
as long as we don't exceed the proposed, yung 5.268 trillion peso 2024 appropriations. Siguro, Sec, I appreciate your initial responses, your preliminary responses. Kung pwede makatanggap na lang po sa inyo ng dagdag na written reply with the numbers and also siguro the list of slow-moving projects so far na nasa MICA list nyo na. Kung pwede po, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, we will submit po. And initially po, yung we have a table po in our BESF po, the list of all projects under the national government na covered po ng MICA. So we will also, we will just give this also to the committee po para ma-provide po kayo. And then ma'am, I agree po with your intervention po. In fact po, actually the concept po talaga and idea of a cash budgeting system really is to have a cash-based budget. Ito po yung mga babayaran lang po natin na mga proyekto na matatapos po sa isang taon. That's why the idea po is until now we are on transition. While we have the EO po, we're still pushing for the passage of the law po of cash budgeting system. So we are in the transition. The 715 billion po kasi is based on estimate po for a couple of years na po kung ano po yung usually po na hindi nababayaran sa isang taon. So naglagay lang po kami dyan ng estimate para po in case po hindi po matapos sa mga proyekto. At least we have something po as in we can pay the contractors po and then all po yung mga kailangan po natin bayaran sa kontrata po natin.
Opo. At salamat din, Sec, dun sa pagbanggit nyo nung bill kaugnay ng cash budgeting system. Lagi naman namin na-appreciate dito sa Congress yung ganyang mga input or payo that could guide our legislative work, lalo na in support of yung mga ganitong executive programs, for example, reforms to the budgeting system. So I think many, if not all of us, will look very supportively at that. Tas ma'am, baka pwede na lang din tayong mag-set ng pulong kahit staff to staff. Yung office ko po at ang DBM about some of these questions that I've raised na baka hindi pa natin na-exhaust. Kung okay lang po.
Yes, ma'am, sure po.
Okay, salamat po. And then, Sec, doon naman po sa House of Reps DBCC briefings nyo, sinabi naman po ni Yusek Kanda na there won't be any projects whose funds will be for later release. Alam ko po naman na medyo complex na paksa ito at pumayag lang si Yusek Kanda maging DBM OIC nung nakaraang taon kung yung Malacanang at hindi po yung DBM ang magpapasya tungkol sa FLRs. But could Yusek tell the committee what was meant? Anong ibig sabihin ni Yusek Kanda nung sinabi nila na wala ng FLRs sa 2023?
Mr. Chair po, siguro po yung walang FLR po when I was with DBM po Undersecretary Jokno po, wala po kaming tinatawag na FLR. So it's something actually new to us when I entered DBM. That's why po when I entered DBM and then nakita ko po kasi napakaraming dokumento ang kailangan pirmahan at kailangan po ipadala sa Office of the President. I think it's quite tedious for the staff and even the Office of the President na tumatagal po yung sistema ng pagre-release ng budget. So pag-assume po natin dyan, nagbigay na po tayo ng instructions po na wala na pong for later release po sa mga pondo po ng gobyerno.
If I may intervene with the permission of Senator Risa,
Yes,
I'm
of
happy
course.
to hear that on the part of, because the topic is cash-based budgeting and FLRs. I think the two are antithetical to each other, no? You cannot have a cash-based budget and then have FLR. Because you release late, of course, you cannot, common sense will dictate that you cannot implement the project. So I think the two are antithetical to each other. So if this administration plans to have FLR, don't expect cash support or only cash-based budgeting from us. That's the bottom line, Your Honors. Because it will be slow. And of course, we have, you're a bunch of economists here, brilliant economists sitting in front of us. Efficiency and opportunity costs are concepts you're very familiar with, no? I think those who implement FLRs don't realize how much is lost by all of this. Not to mention it hits your bottom line and your performance indicators, Your Honor. I just wanted to put that on record. Go ahead, ma'am. Thanks.
Yes po.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. That antithesis, touche talaga. Salamat, Mr. Chair. And Sec, di na po ako mag-follow up question dito sa paksang FLR, but kaya ng sinabi ko kanina, hingi pa ako ng konting oras nyo in that meeting para mas maintindihan yung usaping ito. So, okay pa rin sa inyo yon, ano po, Sec?
Yes, ma'am. Opo.
Okay, salamat, Sec. Then, ang huling tanong ko po sa inyo para ngayong hapon, sinabi niyo po na yung Government Procurement Policy Board, yung GPPB, ay mag-i-issue po ng mga policies na babawasan yung discretion at dadagdagan naman yung transparency ng PSDBM. May huling-hiling na lang ako sa inyo ngayong hapon. If you could provide the committee two things po. Isang description o abstract ng mga polisiya na yung GPPB ay maaaring i-issue para mas magaling na mag-govern yung PSDBM. Tsaka pangalawa, yung mga problema na bawat isa sa mga GPPB policies na ito ay may intensyon na resolbahin at baka po pwedeng ma-illustrate yun ng mga halimbawa na finlag ng Commission on Audit o kaya nabunyag sa mga pagdinig namin sa Blue Ribbon Committee, whether panahon ni dating Chair Gordon o panahon ngayon ni Chair Tolentino. Pwede po bang mahingi yung dalawang iyon?
Yes, ma'am, we will provide you po, Mr. Chair and the committee po.
Maraming salamat po, Sec Pangandaman. Mr. Chair, do I still have a minute or a few minutes for another question or I can wait for the second round?
You have all day, ma'am.
Ganun ba?
I'm just kidding, ma'am. You have a few minutes more, ma'am. Go ahead.
Sige po. Sabihin nyo lang ako, Mr. Chair, ha? So, I'd like to move now. I understand, Mr. Chair, tama po ba? Wala po si BSP Governor Medalla dito kasama natin?
Yes, he was here. He was ready for our Monday hearing, but he had to take a foreign trip. The Bank of International Settlements, which is an important
Right.
international financial institution that we need to be there at.
Okay.
He needs to be there.
Opo, of course. In that case,
But the Monetary Board member, Bruce Tolentino, is with us in case you wish to address a question to the BSP, Your Honor.
perfect. Actually, yung ima-manifest ko na lang sanang request directly involves Mr. Tolentino. Nice to see you here in the hearing, Sir Bruce. I had a meeting, Mr. Chair, with the officers of the Rural Bankers Association of the Philippines. And I'm actually concerned by their report that while their 18 to 22% capital adequacy ratio is already compliant with the Basel standards that BSP has decided, with the Basel standards, that BSP has decided to hike their capitalization requirements even further. And they say that this would greatly diminish their ability to lend and also to retain shareholder capital. So I understand that there was a BSP study on rural banks anchored by Monetary Board member Tolentino. the RBAC officers in that meeting, Mr. Chair, said that this became the basis of the policy stance of the BSP towards the rural banks. So, Mr. Chair, could we please ask the BSP, could we please ask Monetary Board Member Tolentino if they could furnish us with a copy of that study?
And maybe the reason why you required a higher capital adequacy ratio, Your Honors.
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Chair, yes, and Madam Senator, yes, we will produce and we'll provide to your office the background for all of the elements of the Rural Bank Strengthening Program. Now, strengthening the capital is the basis for having strong banks that will protect not only the depositors of the banks, but also enable them to cover all of their operating costs. We do have quite a number of rural banks right now that are only capitalized at levels of 10 million pesos. A 10 million peso capital does not allow the rural bank to recover even its overhead in order to operate, in order to serve its clientele base, generate deposits, and then set out a loan program that is able to cover the needs of the community. So we were hoping that we would work with the rural banks so that in general, we can have much more inclusiveness in the rural sector by having strong, well-capitalized rural banks. Now, Mr. Chair, we should note that out of the 400 or so rural banks that are currently operating, the end result of the entire process will probably be affecting only about 30 to 50 rural banks out of the grand total. And it is these 30 to 50 rural banks that will need to hike their capital because most of the others have already the adequate capital in order to continue operations. So it will only hit the minority who are at the moment relatively weak compared to all of the others. But we will provide all the details, Madam.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Thank you very much, Sir Bruce, and probably included among the majority banks, no, 350 to 370 of them, yung the ones I met with in that RBAP meeting, capitalized way above 10 million pesos. So, salamat for that. May oras pa ba ako, Mr. Chair, o second round na po?
It's been 10 minutes, but you have an additional 2. We'll give you an additional 2, Your Honor.
Okay, salamat, Mr. Chair. Sige, so my last two questions for this round. Kay Sec Balisacan, please.
I'm here, Your Honor.
Yes, magandang hapon po, Sec RC. Una po tungkol sa paksa ng asukal, and then just one question initially on hunger metrics and the food crisis. So medyo related din. Una po sa asukal, did NEDA and the other members of the economic management team jointly advise the president and the executive secretary on the issues and options for dealing both with the short and maybe the medium-term problems of the sugar industry?
We did provide a recent memo on that, Mr. Chair, but that is after the issue has surfaced in the media. And although the NEDA, the appropriate office at NEDA has also been monitoring the sector, Madam Chair, but at that point, we had not issued any memorandum of sort.
Salamat, Sec. Kaya siguro no na nakapag-provide kayo ng memo after the issue surfaced in media kahit nagmo-monitor kayo during that time. Kaya tuloy nagmuka, kahit sa akin, I have to confess, nagbuka sa akin na yung NEDA, yung DTI Sec, even the DOF Sec. Akala ko, or maybe the public thought stood aside habang kumalat yung pagkalito kahit sa publiko about that matter of sugar supply and demand. But thank you for confirming yung susunod kong sasabihin sana na but you did provide a recent memo. Could you please share with us at least the substance of that memo kung hindi man yung kopya ng memo mismo, because this will greatly assist the Senate in reaching a common understanding about the facts of the sugar situation.
Madam Chair, this is a this is a request issued to the some members of the to DOF, to NEDA, and DTI by the Executive Secretary asking us to come up with an assessment of the status of the in the sugar industry and the way forward, especially in relation to the supply and demand situation, Madam Chair, and that's what we did. We came up with a study, quick study to and provide that study to the ES as required.
Okay po. Salamat. Hopefully, in the moving forward, you may be able to share, if not all, some of the assessment points and ways forward sa amin dito po sa Senado to also aid in our legislative work in support of not just the sugar industry but agriculture in general. So to my last question for this round po, Sec, yung una kong tanong dun sa hunger metrics. In dealing with the food price and supply crisis, I understand that the support for farm production is not the only policy instrument that's available. We've heard only about initiatives to support production, but little else. And we have to talk about the other policy instruments because, as the good secretary himself said yesterday, the timeline for farm productivity improvements is over many years rather than just a few months. At sang-ayon po ako sa inyo dyan, Sec. At sinabi nyo rin po kahapon na mabilis na magmamahal palalo ang presyo ng pagkain sa mga darating na mga buwan at gutom ang dulo nito para sa mga kababayan nating underemployed. At mauuna itong gutom at mahal na pagkain kaysa sa inaasam nating lahat na pag-unlad ng agricultural production sa bansa. So for my last question in this round, Sec, ano po yung 2022 baseline at ano naman po yung mga goals for hunger reduction for 2023 and onwards?
The current situation in relation to food prices, Mr. Chair, Madam Senator, is that those high prices are likely to impact on our poverty situation, especially if they linger. And that's why our 8-point socioeconomic development agenda, Mr. Chair, focuses on addressing not only the medium term but also in the near term the issues relating to the high cost of essentials, essential commodities, particularly food and transport, and strengthen the capacity of our system to provide support to particularly financial support to the highly vulnerable groups or segments of our population, so that they are shielded somehow from these high prices of commodities, essential commodities. So that's one. The other aspect that has been discussed, especially in the last cabinet meeting, Madam Chair, is the problems with logistics, because clearly there are serious problems in food logistics, and you can see this from the very wide dispersion between what the farmers receive for their outputs and what consumers pay for consumer goods for food products, and uh, a big part of that explanation has to do with the inefficiencies in the logistics, including the inadequacies of cold storage systems and the high transport costs, including uh, problems associated with LGUs, especially in the transportation of goods in services, Madam Chair. So it's true. You rightly pointed out that the problem of high prices paid by consumers is go far beyond productivity and agriculture, because it does all come also from logistics issues, as well as from our trade policy as well. I have maintained the view that unnecessary restrictions in importation when there is a clear necessity to import, when there's a wide gap between what we can locally produce and what our population needs at prices within their means, and such importation has to be made efficient and transparent and predictable, and that's why trade policy is for us a key component of these efforts to ensure that food prices are affordable are within reach by our consumers, and ensuring food security, particularly among the poor.
Maraming salamat, Sec, especially for mentioning many important concerns. Malungkot lang ako na parang may isa pang dot na kailangan pa nating i-connect the dot kasi parang wala pa tayong hunger metrics saka hunger reduction goals. And hopefully maidagdag po ito, maisama po ito before we go to plenary. So Mr. Chair, suspend muna ako ng mga questions ko for this round. Maraming salamat po.
Many thanks to our Vice Chair and Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa.
Mr. Chair, sorry for it, but
You want to?
yeah, I just respond to that.
Yes, okay, okay.
Mr. Chair, because Madam Senator, I just
Not too long, Sec, kasi
I just wanted
I think she already
I
let
just
you go.
wanted to share that we have the metric and we do monitor hunger, Madam Chair. We have the hunger incidence of families in the Philippines, and measures of food insecurity. We publish those regularly, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Secretary. We'd like to acknowledge the presence of.
Salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I will remind them of your information requests, Your Honor. We'd like to recognize two of our committee vice chairs. We have Vice Chair Senator Mark Villar. Good morning, sir. Good afternoon, sir. And of course, our Balikbayan, the good one. Our committee vice chair, who was a vice chair even before he won again this last election. Very hardworking colleague, Vice Chair Senator J.V. Ejercito. You have the floor, sir, if you wish to ask any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, during the 17th Congress, I defended some of the major departments, including the OTR, which is very essential now in the priority programs of the President. And I'm quite happy and excited that the President Marcos mentioned in his honor that he'll be prioritizing the railway transport system and in the Build Better More program. No? The increase in the OTR budget will finance the railway transport system with a total of 114 billion this year, which is about 5 times, no? As much as the allocation of 23.2 billion in 2022. Big ticket projects under the rail transport program include North-South commuter railway system, 75.1 billion. Metro Manila Subway Project Phase 1, 26.3 billion. MRT3 subsidy, 7.1 billion. LRT line. Our South Long Haul project at 1.1 billion. My concern, Mr. Chairman, anybody can answer from our finance team. The OTR posted a disbursement rate of only 41.5% in 2021. So meaning the low disbursement rate indicates delay and non-completion of these big ticket items. Government only has, of course, limited funds. So how can the DOTR improve its absorptive capacity? Otherwise, sayang, no? Sayang yung these delays. We really need this railway system, these infrastructure projects, so that we can rest with our neighbors. So, yun lang, Mr. Chair, anybody can answer.
Yes, anybody from the DBCC team can answer. I'm testament to what Vice Chair Ejercito said. Really, that's why the very poor disbursement rate on the part of DOTR. And we understand that a lot of these big ticket projects are, there's a gestation period, which actually indicates we should move faster because we know it takes long. So the initial steps should be taken right away. Anyone wishes to answer? Secretary Pangandaman, yes.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Senator, we agree with the observation po na mababa po yung absorptive capacity ng DOTR. But of course, with the new leadership, we expect po that they will move much faster than the previous years. That's why po for the 2023 NEP, we move an amount of 378.2 billion of FAPs, foreign assisted projects po. Instead po of putting it in the in the program of the budget in the program, we placed it under the unprogrammed appropriations po.
If I may interject with the permission of Vice Chair JV, I noticed in the last two administrations, there's a big swift movement of people. Parang isa lang yung USEC from the time of GMA na lang naiwan in those administrations. I forget the name. It's a lady. And if you look at your team now, it's brand new. Of course, you have some returnees, no? Some of the USECs are returnees. But I think that contributes. So maybe in NEDA, we could develop some experts on transportation and procurement with respect to these types of big ticket. Parang wala nang learning curve ulit. Every administration has a learning curve and so there's really very little movement, no? So yun lang. That's one of my observations, Your Honors. Baka we can have some systemic strengthening, diba? Some of the capacity of the bureaucracy will be improved, Something Singapore never has to deal with because their ministers are all career ministers, di ba? Tayo, on the job training, di ba? Parang it's a little embarrassing actually. Yeah. Anything to add?
Yes, actually, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that especially now that President BBM already decided to continue the big ticket items. Kailangan ang planning dito 50 to 100 years in fact, no, in other countries because we cannot go back itong mga dapat nasa 6-year term, dapat talaga long term. So I agree with you, Mr. Chair. So siguro si Isaac Pandaman, so I may just confirm 114 billion ang allocated this year for DOTR railway projects. That's times 5, no? 23 billion lang to nung 20.
Yes po, it's you're correct po, Mr. Chair, it's 113 billion po.
Well, that's a welcome development because Mr. Chair, I think that the two things that are really that our country really has a problem, no? Talagang kaya na tayo naunahan. It's really high cost of electricity and weak infra. So that's a welcome development that we are allocating times 5 para ma-fast track itong mga infra so makahabol tayo. Sana naman makahabol na tayo sa Vietnam, nauna na tayo because of poor infra and high cost of electricity. So yun lang po, that will be the challenge on how the OTR will be able to improve its absorptive capacity. Dati nga 41%, but now we will make it times 5. So hopefully talagang ma-absorb na. Ako naman, Mr. Chair, I would, definitely, that's one of my advocacy. In fact, I defended most of these railway projects during the time I was here before I took a break. So I'm happy that we are already full blast with this. Pero yun lang ang concern ko, Mr. Chair, how I hope that the OTR will be able to step up para yung absorbing capacity matapos talaga nito.
Yes, very good point. I think Secben wants to
Yeah, may I
say
just
something.
add, Your Honor, that in addition to the 100 plus billion appropriated by DOTR, there's also another 300 plus billion in the program. So that as soon as they can implement, we will provide the money. So
Well, that's very welcome,
yeah.
Sec Ben, because I think we have a lot of catching up to do, especially with our ASEAN neighbors. They invested heavily in infrastructure, and I'm glad that President BBM continued this the Build program under the Build Better More program. So sana nga magtuloy-tuloy na talaga Mr. Chair.
Right.
In fact, I filed one of the very first bill I filed, hopefully mapasa natin, yung comprehensive master plan for infrastructure development, that whoever sits as president, syempre bawat presidente may kanya-kanyang legacy, may kanya-kanyang iniisip yung legacy, yung kanyang pet programs. But hopefully, as I mentioned, yung planning for these things dapat 35, 50, 100 years. So I hope we'll get the support of the Senate para magtuloy-tuloy po ito.
In fact, as you mentioned, the President mentioned in his SONA that he's focusing on rail transit system, mass transit talaga. Kasi instead of building lots of roads, ito, and in fact, I understand your impatience, but these are large projects, Your Honor. So yung mayroong S-curve na tinatawag eh. So I can assure you we will ramp it up in the next year or two.
Well, I know Secben, SecRC, they move fast, SecMina. And of course, one of the crucial actors in the ramp up, in the build up of our infrastructure program is now on the other side of the table, no other than our colleague, former Secretary Marco.
Mark the Builder.
The builder. Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Siguro next, Mr. Chairman, just have two points today. One is of course your railway transport system, which I defended last time. Siyempre housing din, ang notice ko lang, and NHA shared the housing backlog. There's about 6.8 million now, no, yung current backlog of housing. And ang napansin ko lang sa budget, from 5.2 billion this year, bumaba naman ng 2 billion. So, baka yung backlog natin will increase, hindi mababawasan to with the decrease, with the slashing of the housing budget from 5.2 to 2 billion. That's all, yun lang, Mr. Chair. So, anybody again can, what's the reason for that?
Any comments from the...
Yeah, I just had a meeting with the housing secretary, and I think the plan is to provide housing for 1 million housing for the next 3 years. And we will actually make use of not necessarily GAA funds, but we can use money from GSIS and SSS and Pag-ibig. And if, in fact, I said there's a lot of money with the land bank, they can also borrow money with the land bank. And so you can rest assured that housing is priority of this administration, Your Honor.
Good to know. Thank you for that, Sec. How do you feel? Maybe I can ask Senator JV, who knows a lot about. He's the father of the Department of Housing, Secretary Ben. You mentioned with respect to classrooms, yung container. What about for housing? Because I once saw a private sector sponsored housing project in Smoky Mountain, which was multi-level, I think 3 or 4 stories, and it was very nice because they painted it, and you don't feel that you're in a container because they took out because mababa yung bubong nun so tinanggal nila yung bubong, and they put one on top of the other, but that separate, sort of perpendicular to each other. Have you heard of these kinds of projects?
Yes, I saw it on Smoky Mountain. But I think with the Secretary Acusaro, who was a developer, hopefully they will have more innovative ideas now that will make the cost, lower the cost and faster, no? Talagang free pub na ngayon. Ang naging lang natin, complaint with the container vans. Pag may dumadaan na mabigat na truck, rin. It's also vibrating. Yun lang. So I'm hoping with the innovation right now in the housing sector, I think there will be new models, that are prefab, that will be faster and more economical to produce, Mr. Chair.
Right, and maybe given incentives also by the FIRB. So for new innovations, which really will speed up, will contribute to, as you mentioned. You're done, Your Honor? Thank you very much, Vice Chair JV. Yeah, we'll go to Senior Vice Chair Amy and then Vice Chair Mark afterwards.
Okay, nahihiya na ako, third round na ako. Anyway, I just wanted to inquire from Secretary Joc, no? The position of the financial managers with regard to the IT BPO's permanent work from home, work from anywhere setup. PEZA, as well as the other IPAs with BOI, as well as the DOLE have expressed an appreciation for the clamor from the BPO sector to finally allow work from home setups that are in excess of what's stipulated presently in the CREATE. We know that the September deadline has been extended indefinitely, but at the same time, there are concerns that while it is unresolved, the tax incentives under CREATE will be lost by the BPO and IT companies when they do not conduct business within the site of the eco zone. What is the position actually of our financial managers on this?
The FRIB met yesterday, yeah, I think yesterday, and we decided that there will be a smooth transfer of benefits from the PESA to BOI. And so that problem is solved, Your Honor.
Yes, so
So the tax incentives will continue,
I see.
okay? But they can opt to do it work from home.
So the indefinitely,
That-
the indefinite is now going to be permanent. Is that correct?
If the transition is done by the, I think that some 2,000 or so firms from PESA, they will transfer to BOI incentives.
No, it's actually the CREATE incentives po. But there's a limitation
Yes, yes.
on the work from home. This limitation, I think it's 30%. Is
May I call
yes.
you Sec Chionko to explain?
Present, 30% is actually allowed, but an exception was carved out for COVID. It lapsed in March or May and then was extended in September, thereafter extended indefinitely. So 30%. But given the great resignation throughout the world, including the Philippines, many would not like to come back to work in their offices again, or would like to consider a 50-50 or 70-30 hybrid arrangement. That's the concern. And there was a sense that the financial managers were against it, given the efforts of and protests, the legitimate protests, in fact, of the real estate, hotel and restaurant, and retail industries.
Has to be heard to be
Yes, yes.
recognized.
You
Mr.
Sec is
Chionko.
familiar to us. She's
Yes.
appeared here before. Yes, yes.
No, no. The FIRB met yesterday, and first of all, uh, what was agreed upon first by the FIRB was that the work from home arrangement, because of the extension of the declaration of state of calamity, is moved to December. That it's also moved to December. That is one. Now, during the interim between now and December, the BPO companies that are registered with PESA will be allowed to transfer their registration, yes, to transfer their registration to BOI already. So, however, even if they transfer to to BOI, they will be enjoying the same incentives they've been enjoying under the CREATE because they're under a transitory. However, since they will be registered with the BOI already, they will not be subject to the yes, because they will be not subject to the limitations on location by
That
PESA.
compels them to move from PESA to BOI, right?
It's just a registration. They don't have to
see.
physically move.
That's right. I see.
It's just a registration.
And
So
BOI has no such limitation of 30%.
yes, they don't have a limitation on location.
I see.
Diminution with the permission of there's no diminution of incentives.
There's none. They will simply continue. They will simply continue the incentives they've been enjoying because right now they're under a transitory period because most of them were registered pre-create. So whatever it was that they were enjoying right now, they are enjoying right now, will simply carry over to
This may
to
be a
the-
really stupid question, but aside from the work from home issue, why are they being required to shift to BOI? Why can't we just give PESA and everyone the same leeway?
yeah. The incentives right now under create between BOI and PESA are already basically the same. So if it refers to a new investor, obviously they can opt to register with BOI and they will no longer be subject to the jurisdictional requirements.
No, but is there an
I think-
effort to build up
yeah.
BOI and put down PESA? I'm curious. And what
Uh,
happens to the other IPAs? Because you have Clark, Subic, Apesco, etc., that are not really PESA or BOI.
they remain as they are. It's just that the IT BPOs, they're the ones who have the work from home arrangement kasi. So it concerns them more. The other areas, other industries like manufacturing, etc. I think that will be more the
Maraming
focus.
BPO sa Subic at Clark.
Well, I guess they will be entitled to the same.
They can shift to
they can also
BOI
shift, yes.
registration. BOI registration.
Yes.
Then.
Anent with the permission of Senator Jaime, anent those is there something in the PESA law which requires they must be physically
Yes,
that's in the PESA law.
unfortunately.
That's in the
yes,
PESA law.
that-
So I think
the
that's
thing.
that's one of the
That's
answers
the
to
limitation.
Senator Jaime's question. Then, so
It's
strictly
very clear.
construed, they cannot
Yes,
have that
it's-
hybrid arrangement.
It's very clear that they should be operating within on site. So rather than having to, we don't need to amend it. We just, because the ones that are caught in this are the ones that were registered pre-create.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very satisfied with the answer, Your Honor, and thank you for raising that.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there were concerns kasi during the confirmation of the DOLE in the Commission on Appointments yesterday, as well as PESA and BOI earlier in the trade meeting. So we were wondering where we were going with that. Now I'd like to ask also, there's been a rash of crime, kidnapping for ransom and so on in the Pogo groups. So I was wondering, considering that the tax collections from POGOs have decreased to 1.55 in the first half of 2022. What are your thoughts on POGO? Are we going to expand it or shall we just leave it as is, or like Isabong, ban it entirely for failure to regulate it adequately? By and large, ang dami nang umalis di ba?
Yeah,
Sa
if,
totoo lang.
if you ask my personal
Yes,
opinion
I
on
will
this,
hold you to it po.
let's discontinue with the POGO because of the social cost of the POGO. In fact, the total revenue for 2021 is down to 3.9 billion. Dati po, at peak, it was 7.2 billion in 2020. Okay. So if you have to ask me, I'm in favor of discontinuing. In fact, China has discontinued.
Well,
POGO.
China has
Even-
declared
even,
it illegal.
even
long
Cambodia
ago.
has, and it also has a reputational risk because people will ask, why are they going to the Philippines? Why discontinue na sa China, discontinue sa Cambodia? Why are they going to the Philippines? Maybe because we are loose or we're not strict on our rules, right? So meron tayong reputational risk by allowing them.
I thoroughly agree po. And certainly this aspect of lawlessness that we are giving to the rest of the world is not worth whatever we're collecting, which appears quite meager between PAGCOR and BIR. It's not really a big deal. And
It must be meager for the finance secretary to say we don't need it.
yeah, that's right. It's no longer interested. I would like to ask also about the public transport, farmers and fisher folk, regarding the fuel subsidies that have been mooted time and again publicly. But is there actually funding for said fuel subsidies, discount vouchers, and other relief in the proposed 2023 budget? Secretary Amina, please.
Billion ng DA, 2.5 billion. 1 billion ang DA, tigpa 500 sila. Tigpa 500.
It's in one of your slides, Sec, yung 200. You had a slide where you loosely termed
Yes.
ayuda and you set forth
There will be,
the assistance in the different departments. Yeah.
yes, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Fuel.
Yes po, for
I know you
agriculture.
listed the departments, pero I didn't understand which part of that was actually fuel.
Yes,
Kasi may DA doon, pero may seed, may fertilizer.
if we can,
Grabe, for the first time in history, diesel is higher than gasoline.
gasoline
So
po.
the rural folk are really hurting.
Farmers. 500, tig 500 sila. Okay. Under the DA po, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, we have 500 million. 500 million of fuel subsidy. Tama.
Yes, but I go back to the principle espoused by Secretary Jokno that this should be targeted. Are
Yes
these
po.
targeted to fuel? Kasi ito, random cash assistance yan eh.
These are fuel discount for farmers and fisher folk amounting to 3,000 shall be provided to 162,866 corn farmers and fisher folk through
Corn?
cash card.
Only corn?
Corn and rice farmers. Only corn.
Only corn. That's really curious. Why?
Bakit nga pala corn? Sila yung gumagamit ng machine para sa... Sila daw po yung gumagamit ng
Sheller,
machine.
Thresher.
Yes po.
Daya naman. Mahirap yan i-justify.
Oo. Ang rice wala, no?
Ang rice and other crops, hindi kasama. Lahat gumagamit
I'm sure
ng
meron
crude.
po, opo. Is that the request of the previous request nila corn din? Yeah. The request po of the Department of Agriculture then was just for corn po.
Yeah. So this cash assistance is solely for fuel.
At least for DA po and for DOTR.
Right. Okay. DOTR, lahat yan na fuel din?
Yes po.
Kasi yung sa DA, may 5,000 pa para sa rice farmer. Iba-iba yun, hindi siya eksaktong fuel subsidy eh.
For DOTR po, the definition, okay. Provision for financial assistance or fuel vouchers amounting to 6,000 each to 388,448 qualified public utility vehicle, taxi, tricycle, and full-time ride-hailing and delivery services drivers nationwide, as identified and validated by the LTFRB po.
Sige, siguro hihingi na lang ako ng
Yes po.
listahan
Yes, ma'am.
for these 5 departments shown on in the screen so that we can also explain that we are actually providing fuel support. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you po.
Yun lang, Madam Senator Amy. Are you done with your questions? Okay. So next is, okay. Okay, let's go ahead. After you Senator Mark now.
I can be reserved. Am I the last?
You're, okay na yung last.
Okay. Anyway, I wanted to ask about the continuation. My concern is about the continuation of the build. But Senator JV already asked this question about the unprogrammed funds, the presence of the railway, and I was given information that a lot of the most, if not all, the projects that were started in the BBB, the build, are in the 2023 budget. So I'd like to take this opportunity to just commend the economic team for really continuing what was started. You know, even from past administration. So now I can see that masigla yung build under the BBM. So it's build more. So I'm very happy that the build more is going to usher in a new age of government infrastructure. It's all here. The Panay Guimaras Negros, the Bataan Cavite Bridge,
Sana
the
matapos.
Dalton
The
Pass.
Panay Guimaras is there, but Senator Dillon is no longer here.
Yeah. Cebu, Mactan, the list goes on. What can I say except that thank you for your efforts, and of course I'm not surprised because most of you there, we worked on it even before. So you were there in the start, and it's good that you'll be here to
finish. So I can move for if you're accepting motions. I can-
Checking,
Sorry,
Your Honor,
sorry.
with Senator Risa if she still wants. I think time. Yeah, please.
One hirit pala. Kasi this is a question that's asked of us all the time. Is the allocation for emergency benefits and allowances for the healthcare workers sufficient to pay the unreleased benefits of our healthcare workers since the beginning of the pandemic? Naniningil sila eh. What is the status of the list of frontliners prepared by the DOH for compensation? Apparently, said list has remained incomplete for ages.
Just a heads up to our colleagues if there's no other colleague who wishes to do a second round, then we'll let our very busy economic managers go. Your Honors. Yeah.
Up to date, sorry po, but to date po, we don't have yet the complete list of beneficiaries. So, we have yet to receive the documentary requirements before we can
Is that
release
DOH
the
who is doing
funding.
it?
Yes
DOH.
po. DOH po. But for 2023 po, we have provided the budget. So, but still po, I think we need to have the list of beneficiaries po from DOH.
Yes, once again, it always boils down to the list, right? So let's push DOH to come up with that. But you're confident that we have the funds to pay our frontliners finally after 2 years.
Yes, ma'am. We will pay them po.
We're just waiting from the two minority members who are getting conflicting information here because I received the text from Senator Coco, the minority leader, that he's no longer going to ask. But his staff, I think, is saying he's going to ask. So, baka yung staff gusto magtanong. Ha?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, I will. Yes,
meron
please,
lang
please.
ako na
Let's take
pahabol ko
advantage
lang.
of the law,
I'll take
Your
advantage
Honors.
of the law.
Please go ahead.
Being the principal sponsor of your universal healthcare law, syempre I'm concerned. So, under the UHC Act, the budget for 2023 is supposed to be 319.38 billion para yung on the road to full implementation kasi yung in the recent years hindi na ibigay, Mr. Chair. Yung dapat 270, 170 lang. So, it was not revealed. So, just like to ask, siguro sa DBM or sa, what is the total appropriation for UHC for 2023? 100.
I'm not mistaken, it's from 80 to 100, no? Yeah. 79 or 80 to 100, yeah. So it's an increase, Your Honor, to your another one. Am I correct? Yeah.
100.23 billion.
Yeah.
Total yan, Sec Mina.
Yes po. Opo.
Total national government subsidy, but of
National
course,
subsidy,
it gets
yes.
funding from other sources also.
Yes.
You're marking.
Okay, thank you. Because I just want to check kasi full required budget will be 319, so we'll just check the other appropriations.
We were told that Senator Risa, Vice Chair Risa, wishes to do a second round. So we'd like to recognize her, Senator Risa. Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, salamat,
So,
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
Thank you po.
Yeah, again, we'll give you another 10 minutes, Your Honor.
Okay, salamat, Mr. Chair. Just say when it's up. Thank you po. Balik po kay Sec Balisacan, Sec RC. So Sec, ipagpatuloy ko lang po yung mga tanong ko sa inyo tungkol dun sa food crisis at saka hunger metrics. So we always hear, especially mula sa inyong mga ekonomista, no, that you can't manage what you can't measure. But gaya ng pinag-uusapan natin kanina, we really need to attend to hunger. So posible kaya, Sec, na ang PSA i-monitor yung hunger incidence at saka hunger severity on a regular basis in the same way na minomonitor po ninyo yung inflation on a regular basis?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yeah. Yeah, we do, we are currently um, uh, upgrading our capacity to do more surveys and more frequent surveys, Your Honor. For example, for our poverty metrics, instead of the once every 3 years, we will now do it once every 2 years and make it now also provincial. We will improve the precision of the provincial estimates by increasing the samples, and so we are moving in that direction. With respect to the hunger metrics, our latest data, Your Honor, is 2021, no, where the food per population is 6.55 million. And we will be also doing a national uh, 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 we will be expanding the community-based monitoring system, which will allow us to have a better handle on the statistics pertaining to food insecurity and hunger issues. So hopefully, Your Honor, if you support us on this, if Congress support us on this, because we are asking for more resources for our statistical system, so that we can do more of these surveys. I think that there is a clear need for us to monitor this frequently in a more frequent fashion, because indeed in the League of Nations, our statistics on hunger and food insecurity is not encouraging, even given our level of per capita income. We should be doing, given the level of per capita income, we should actually be doing more or better in hunger and hunger reduction and in food insecurity reduction. But that is not what we are seeing in the data. That's why I think we have to be more aggressive in pushing for our food security goals.
Agree po, Sec. And couldn't you also just hire survey firms to do this for you?
Our Philippine Statistics Authority has the capacity, Your Honor. In fact, with the shift from pencil survey to more digital survey, because we have been acquiring digital equipments for our survey. I think that will facilitate a lot the actual survey and processing of and quick processing of information. As you may have noticed, Your Honor, our results and our nationwide survey and households pertaining to poverty, usually it would take us almost 2 years before the result of the survey come out. But with the digital processing, the survey last year was released early this year. The results were released early this year. So I think that by more up-to-date information and more frequent release of information, we should be more capable and able to respond to this policy-wise to these challenges.
Okay po, I certainly hope so, Sec. Pasensya no ha, at times the economic managers seem flat-footed or uninvolved in this matter of food prices and hunger. You did announce though, Sec, na there will be a release in 2022 of 4 billion pesos in cash grants in the face of rising food prices. Hanggang saan po aabot yon? How much of a contribution, at least to short-term or yung tinawag nyo kaninang near-term hunger reduction, will be achieved?
Let me pull out that information again, Madam Chair. The cash subsidy for obviously our position, Madam Chair, is that Madam Senator, is that given the fiscal space and the so many conflicting needs for of our development agenda. The only way we can achieve more with less is to improve the administration of our uh, 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 social protection programs, including the 4Ps. No? That's why we are ramping up this digitalization of the issuance of physical ID, because with that we can be sure that those who are targeted really receive the subsidy, and the what do you call this, these errors of targeting, those are not supposed to be receiving the subsidy, are actually receiving the subsidy, and there's a lot of that, Your Honor. So even though the resources are not that generous, we expect to achieve more. But the amount will not really go that far, and that's not expected to be sustained, Your Honor. What we are counting on is that we will be able to address the prices issue, the high prices issue, that will go back to lower price regimes by containing the surges in prices. That's why we are focusing on also on logistics. Your Honor, earlier I was mentioning that this wide this wide dispersion and between what the farmers receive for their produce and what consumers pay, and that has to do with the inefficiency of our marketing system, our distribution system, and obviously also corruption even at the local level, when trucks are being charged for the use of roads, uh, just so that they could pass. I think that those raise the prices of commodities, and we see that every time I go to Ilocos, there's we see so many unnecessary checkpoints and obviously those have not much less to do with quarantine or sanitary or phytosanitary issues, but it's really for something else.
Opo. Pero
So
sir,
I think that
gamitin po natin yung mga numero na binigay niyo sa amin. Of the 6.55 million food poor families or households, ilan po sa kanila ang mararating nung 4 billion pesos? Ilan po sa kanila ay maiibsan yung gutom sa 4B po na iyan?
we actually have 10.3 billion, Your Honor, to benefit 6 million individuals who will receive 500 pesos per month. It's a very meager amount.
500
for six-
pesos per month for how
per
many
month
months?
for
Okay.
just for 6 months. So it's really a very transitory measure. The assumption, Your Honor, is that after that we hope to be able to get those prices to more manageable levels, and inflation in food will be already checked.
Okay po. Actually, naunahan niyo na ako dun sa huling tanong ko sa inyo for this round, RC. Tatanong ko sana, how much food crisis ayuda, well, how much will be enough in the coming months and in 2023? And if requested po, paano nyo i-generate yung listahan ng needy at underemployed households? Doon na po ba sa CBMS kukunin iyon?
Yeah, as I said earlier, Madam Chair, Madam Senator, we are ramping up the digitalization, the national ID, and we will link that national ID with the data systems of DSWD and our data systems of the Department of Agriculture, so that there will be only one information. that will reduce significantly not just the cost of an administration of ayuda, but also will help ensure that the assistance we are providing will reach the deserving and targeted groups. Your
So at
Honor.
least yung 6 million individuals na yon for the
Yeah.
next 6 months. Pero there are
6
12
months.
months in the year. How much would be enough for 2023 total?
We can't the gap what we call the poverty gap or the income gap, that's the shortfall of the average income of the poor to get them out of poverty is quite significant, and I think this is 500 pesos per month would not be enough. But what we are counting on is these other interventions that we are putting in place
Prices, etc.
will help to supplement that efforts. I personally, I also do not think that this is the sustainable way of achieving food security. I think we have to go back to the basics. That is, food insecurity is very much a function of the prices plus and the incomes opportunities for poor households to earn a living. And I think this is where we are focusing on the quality of jobs and the price stability, especially for food.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Sec RC. Mr. Chair, may oras pa ba ako in this round or next round na ulit?
This is the last and only round, Madam.
Okay, Mr.
So,
Chair. In that case, may I ask, I just have 4 questions for Sec Joc, no? May I still
Yes,
ask them
please.
this
Yes.
time?
Yes, please.
Salamat, Mr.
Yes,
Chair. Opo. So, Sec Joc, no, the BOC raided sugar warehouses, but because mukhang there was no prior intelligence work or sufficient prior intelligence work, they mainly just inconvenienced legitimate sugar sector stakeholders instead of actually discovering, unmasking smuggling and hoarding. Kayo po ba yung nag-order ng mga sugar raids na ito, Sec?
No, ma'am.
Hindi nga po. Pero after a couple of days, napag-alaman ninyo na may mga ganitong operations.
Could you repeat your question?
After a couple of days, though you were not the one who ordered these raids, after a couple of days or so, you found out that there were these operations.
Yes, they raided some establishments, some of them legitimate, some are questionable, but I cannot answer for that, Your Honor. Hindi po ako nag-order ng mga raids na yan.
Yes po, malinaw po yun. So at that point in time na pag-alaman ninyo, what guidance did you give Malacanang and the BOC?
Well, actually, the economic managers prepared a brief for the president, and it was received this morning to take care of the sugar issue, and we gave them short-term and long-term measures. And so I cannot actually at this time tell you what's in the report because
alright.
I think the president has to see that first.
Okay po, fair enough. I just hope na kung at ito po Sec ay pareho dun sa memo na binanggit ni Sec Balisacan kanina.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. But yun na, okay, fair enough. The president has first crack at that. But hopefully, as I also told Sec Balisacan earlier, you economic managers can share part of, if not all, of the recommendations with us, including the short and long-term measures, pati in terms of a better functioning of the Bureau of Customs in the whole agricultural sector. And then just moving on to smuggling, Sec Jokno, while we are on the subject of the BOC, an estimate of revenue losses worth 7.6 billion pesos was mentioned during one committee of the whole hearing here at the Senate. Actually, Mr. Chair, wala akong mga tanong about that at this point in time, pero I'd like to ask Sec Joc, no, if they could submit an assessment and their work plan for addressing the issue of smuggling, lalo na po ng mga agricultural products. Kaya submit na lang po in writing, Sec, kasi of course, there's no need for us to telegraph the answer to smugglers themselves.
To be accurate, ma'am, the Bureau of Customs is actually ahead of their revenue target, very much ahead. But we will oblige and submit to you a report on the smuggling.
All right, salamat, Sec. Moving on now to this, my last topic. Yes, my last topic for this afternoon. Moving on to mining. During your post-SONA forum, you said that the mining sector will be the economy's growth driver. Sina Sec Balisaca naman at Pascual seem to have disagreed. They said it would be the manufacturing sector and the IT BPM sector, respectively, that will drive growth. So I'm enlightened by the discussion yesterday, no, in yesterday's hearing about the drivers of economic growth. Sana po mas maipaliwanag pa ito dun sa Philippine Development Plan. But for now, I'd just like to zero in on a tension between agriculture and mining. So yung second to the last question po, Sec Joc, no, yung DENR Secretary naman will be very attentive to how pollution from mines will be threatening the fishery sector and also our dwindling groundwater resources. Have you started to communicate with her so that your two departments don't work at cross purposes and so that the mining industry will not jeopardize food security?
Your Honor, the answer to the above, to your question, what will be the sources of growth is all of the above. Yung pong sinabi ni RC, sinabi ni Pascual, sinabi ko. No. It's really mining, agriculture, and manufacturing. Why? Because number one, in the past, we have neglected mining. Practically wala pong mining because it was banned. And in fact, for the last several years, the contribution of mining, if I remember right, is only 0.5% of GDP. At its peak, the contribution of mining was 7%. So that is a possible source of growth. Now, agriculture also, it's been in and out of recession during the many years that we have observed it. Now, we can only grow agriculture to about 2.5 to 3%. That will be a significant boost to the economy. And a strong agriculture would also mean a strong manufacturing, especially in food processing po.
I agree.
Not forget
particularly with the
tourism
last two
also,
points.
Your
Yes,
Honor.
Mr. Chair.
Secretary, let's not forget tourism also because I think that's something that can really provide broad-based growth and progress because you don't need a degree to work in the tourism. Some do, of course, if you're going to talk about the accountants and the bookkeepers, etc. But, you know, to work in hotel or to provide services, I think I've seen that in my home province of Aurora where in the 2000s, we had 15,000 tourists a year for the whole province. But in 2016 or 17, we hit over 1 million tourists. This is without a airport, without regular flights. So imagine that is the, and if you look at the figures for domestic tourism, the growth has really far outstripped foreign tourism. Of course, for obvious reasons because the connectivity, no. But really, it just shows you that's why an end to the discussion on DOTR and in transport infrastructure. Wow, if we get that right, we can expect a lot of to do better numbers in foreign tourism, maybe to approximate the growth of domestic tourism. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, Mr. may I just add, we did also mention that tourism is going to be a major driver also. And
Remember yesterday I also added it and then today I added it again. So parang hindi siya top of mind. Just to maybe always constantly remind us that our neighbors are doing great guns on tourism and maybe we could approximate that if we put in the right ingredients.
And also to add to what the chair has said, sinasabi po ng mga local tour operators na ang advice daw sa kanila ng World Tourism Council is that international tourism will recover in a 2 to 3 year period pa. So baka pagkakataon talaga palakasin lalo yung domestic tourism.
I completely agree. Before the pandemic, tourism was the fastest growing industry in the whole world. In the whole world. So just think of that, no? If we're not a part of that, then we're missing out.
Mhm.
So there's so many components to tourism, actually. There's cruise tourism. And I met with the CEO of Royal Caribbean, where I think more than 30% of the staff are Filipino. And he told me that they're so bullish on the Philippines. And in fact, if we would only build better cruise ports, they would stop at more stops. The problem is a cruise is a circuit. So we don't have enough stops for a circuit. So, and then ang ginagawa nila, tumitigil sila sa Leyte, sa Boracay, and they would have another additional boat to pick up from the cruise ship. So kasi they cannot dock at the cruise port. So just to put that in perspective, Your Honors.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Sec, just a follow-up to my second to the last question. So nag-uusap na po ba kayo ni Secretary of the Environment para to preempt undermining food security or jeopardizing food security?
Yes, ma'am, we constantly talk, especially on the fiscal regime for mining.
Yes. Opo. Yes, in fact, there's a pending case in the Supreme Court about that very point na dapat ayusin yung fiscal regime to give a bigger share to the local governments in mining affected communities than they currently enjoy right now. So yung huli na lang po, Mr. Chair, in the months ahead, I hope to hear a report from the DOF on this, yung intersection between mining, our fisheries, groundwater resources, food security, and how that new fiscal framework or a new fiscal framework na nabanggit din ni Sec for the mining industry might be corrected. How that new fiscal framework for the mining industry that DOF is developing maybe can also be leveraged to ensure protection for our fresh and fishing water resources and the communities that rely on them. Would the department be ready to talk about this, Sec, say by early November?
No, we constantly talk, Your Honor, and maybe the report will come out maybe before the end of October.
All right, even better. All right, maraming salamat, Sec Joc. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Risa, and rest assured we will remind the various departments of your requests for your document requests, information requests. Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I think we're ready for the favorite motion of Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You worked yourself to the point of exhaustion, so I think we should all be thankful for your hard work over the past
Thank you very much.
few sessions. And of course, I'd like to move
Directing traffic, the hard work was done by the
very
ladies and
exhausted
gentlemen.
yesterday. Everyone else, thank you very much.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we wish our secretaries well. I know some of you are accompanying the president to the United States, so I hope you spread the news that the Philippines is open for business. We have very talented workforce. So our young people, our young graduates don't have to leave for foreign shores, and we can attract more jobs to our shores. So thank you very much, Sec Ben, Sec RC, Monetary Board, Member Bruce, Secretary Mina, and your very hardworking teams. Salamat sa inyo. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Move to adjourn.
Thank you very much. There being no objection, this adjourns. We just suspend. Thank you, Chair Mark, for staying till the end. Thank you very much.